How's it going, everyone? It is me, aLone Vault Wanderer, and welcome back to the aLone Cast. We are trying this series again because people really liked the first episode, and I really like doing it, so let's give it a go. It is the 27th of August, 2017. We've got a bunch of great gaming news to talk about. I've added a few new segments to the aLone Cast, so let me know what you think about those in the comments below. As always, the last segment will be about fan questions and answering the questions that you pose in the comments below. So if you would like to be featured on the next aLone Cast, please leave your questions in the comments below. They can be gaming or personal related, but with all that out of the way, let's get to the first news segment. Up first, we're going to be talking about all things Bethesda and VR. The other day, Bethesda revealed the release dates for the VR versions of all of their games, including, of course, Fallout 4, Doom, and Skyrim. The following dates are as such. Skyrim VR will launch on November 17th, exclusively on PlayStation VR. Doom VFR will launch on December 1st on PlayStation VR and also the Vive. And finally, Fallout VR will launch on December 12th, exclusively on the Vive. Doom VFR would be a separate game rather than a straight port of Doom. That's why apparently it's currently priced at $30 on the PlayStation Store. It also seems that Skyrim VR is going to be the base game, including all the DLC and all the expansions, but just ported to virtual reality. So it's priced $60 on the PlayStation Store, and also as well Fallout 4 VR, which is set at $60 on Steam. So, look, for all you VR fanatics out there, this is probably good news. I mean, aside from these games, which other big AAA games have we gotten on VR? The only thing that comes to my mind is the Batman VR game. But even with that being said, that was like one mission. We haven't seen like all of these VR games from a big AAA publisher or developer like a Bethesda launch simultaneously and just launch it all, really. I mean, VR is still one of those things where people are hesitant to get into it because we haven't seen big third parties and big AAAs release their games onto the hardware because it's still very risky at this stage. And it's still, even with all the price drops, I mean, I think Oculus dropped permanently down by $100 or $200. Vive did something similar. But even with that, it's still a very expensive prospect for people. One, if they don't have a gaming PC, they have to get a capable gaming PC. And two, to buy the headsets themselves. Especially if you live in a place like Australia, for instance, where to get a VR headset, the Vive, it's over $1,000. And that's Australian, mind you, so convert to your local currency, but $1,000 to get VR on top of the gaming PC that you already have, which itself is already expensive if you're buying parts from Australia, because you have to ship them over, etc., or buy them, you know, much more marked up at a local retailer. So for me personally, anyways, I still don't see the appeal, even with Skyrim, Doom, and Fallout, games that I've played. I haven't played much Skyrim, you guys all know that, but even with those big AAA games, I still don't think I'm going to be getting into VR. And I think I've determined what would be required for me personally to get into VR. And it would have to be in like 1 year, for instance. Every single, or at least most major AAA game developers and publishers release games onto VR headsets. So let's say it was EA, Bethesda, Square Enix, PlayStation, Microsoft/Xbox, like Activision or Blizzard. All of those, or most major publishers, will need to release, you know, games sporadically throughout a year onto a VR headset like the Vive or PlayStation VR or Oculus for me to actually be incentivized to buy it, because at this stage it's still very expensive. Even though I have the PC, maybe PlayStation VR is something that's a little bit more accessible, but I don't have a PS4, so I have to buy the console, which is like, I don't know, $500 to $600 here in Australia, and then purchase the VR headset on top of that. And just the current library isn't substantive enough for me to make that decision, especially because I just have so many other games that I want to play. And if I want to play Skyrim, if I want to play Doom, or if I want to play Fallout 4, right, I will just play it on the PC. I don't see that reason, even with these games again, for me to be, you know, delving into VR and playing. Even though I've experienced VR, mind you, I've experienced, PlayStation VR, and it was okay. It was immersive. It was great, but again, it's the purchasing prospect. It's the price point. And all of those things, it's the third-party support. So while it's great to see a publisher like Bethesda support VR with 3 big titles, I mean, Skyrim, Doom, and Fallout 4 are big titles, I don't think it's enough for me, and I think it's not enough for a bunch of other people as well, that are still lukewarm on VR, and that are still, you know, tempted to buy it, but not really that much, especially when we have all these other consoles and games to play. So it's good for the VR industry. I hope other publishers follow suit, because that might make me purchase a VR headset, but at this stage, it is certainly not enough. Of course, I would love to know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you like VR? Do you own a VR headset? Do these releases by Bethesda make you incentivized to buy a VR headset? I would love to know your opinions. Please share them below. Next up, we're going to be talking about Digital Foundry getting some hands-on time with Skyrim on the Nintendo Switch. They were at Gamescom, of course, and they didn't even know, Digital Foundry didn't even know that Skyrim was going to be playable on the Nintendo Switch at Nintendo's booth. But lo and behold, it was there. It was a bit of a surprise to them. And apparently, the game is running pretty well. Now, there are a few caveats. The game was only playable in handheld mode. There was no docked version. Apparently, I guess they want to show people the fact that you can play Skyrim on the go, which is why as well, apparently, they didn't allow you to take direct capture of the gameplay. You could only do like an over-the-shoulder recording with a handheld camera or whatever it is. So they wanted to show the fact that you could hold it in your hands and take it anywhere. So there's that. Also as well, apparently there was a dev kit attached to the Nintendo Switch, so we don't know whether that was actually helping the performance of the frame rate. But nevertheless, even with all those caveats out of the way, Digital Foundry was fairly impressed with what they saw when playing Skyrim on the Switch. So I'll give you a rundown of their information. I'll get into my thoughts about it. So attendees were given 15 minutes to play and explore Skyrim with no restrictions at all. They could go anywhere they wanted. Digital Foundry said it is pretty polished in handheld mode, running at what they thought was native 720p, delivering, in their words, not mine, an accomplished mobile experience. The consistency in performance was impressive, especially compared to the last-gen versions of Skyrim. It was running at a similar frame rate and performance to the Xbox One and PS4 releases of Skyrim Special Edition. Again, it was pretty much locked at a 30 FPS with no real hitching or frame rate drops, which is good. They're not sure how many features that were incorporated in Skyrim Special Edition are actually being transferred over to the Switch version of Skyrim, because it's not actually officially called Skyrim Special Edition on Switch. It's just called Skyrim Nintendo Switch, or whatever the official name is. It's not actually called Special Edition, so we don't know how many of those improved features are brought along, but nevertheless, the performance seems good. Also as well, they had the Joy-Con motion controls there, and those have been implemented, and you saw those at E3's presser for Bethesda, or Bethesda's E3 presser. You know what I mean. And they kind of looked cool, maybe a little bit gimmicky, but they said they were there. And again, they didn't get to play the game in docked mode, which really is going to be the best, indicator of the graphical performance of the game, and especially seeing things like aliasing and all that, because of the Nintendo Switch screen, it's so small, which is not a bad thing. It's a handheld console, of course. So the game can be running at 720p, but sometimes you might not pick on things like the frame rate, or, the graphical fidelity of the game. Because with games like Breath of the Wild that I play on the Nintendo Switch, the game runs much better in handheld mode. It runs much closer to 30 frames per second. But when you actually go to the docked mode, or the TV mode, whatever you want to call it, frame rate drops are much more visible, and also as well, the lack in graphical fidelity is also much more noticeable when you're playing it on a big TV. So there's that. I just want to give my thoughts on Skyrim on the Nintendo Switch, because I actually haven't played much Skyrim. Like, I have, but I haven't really played it to the end enough for me to say that, yes, I've actually played Skyrim. So actually, I'm pretty excited for Skyrim on the Nintendo Switch, because I've been playing so much Nintendo Switch, yeah? I can play it while commuting on the train to work every single day, back and forth. That's like 40 to 50 minutes of extra game time every single day that I just didn't have because of the Nintendo Switch, and because of the fact that you can actually play it on the go, yeah? So Skyrim on the Nintendo Switch is something that I'm definitely going to be picking up, and I'm going to be playing the shit out of. Similar to Breath of the Wild, I put over 100 hours into that game, and I see myself doing something very similar with Skyrim on the Switch, again, especially because I haven't really played it much. And it's good to know that the game is running fairly well on the Switch, even though in docked mode it's 720p. Like, you guys need to understand, when a game is 720p in our handheld mode rather, on the Switch, it looks great. It looks fucking fantastic. And in fact, because when a game is running at 720p, the Nintendo Switch screen itself is 720p, that makes the game run so well. That's exactly the reason why Breath of the Wild runs well in handheld mode with the Switch, because the actual fidelity of the game, the resolution of the game, is matching the resolution of the console itself. So again, I'm really excited. 720p in handheld mode sounds fucking amazing to me. And again, just being able to play Skyrim on the go, we've never really been able to do this, and it's going to give me more opportunities to play this game. Of course, it's one of those things where I could be playing it on the train, and then while waiting for dinner, I'll sit down and play it on the TV. It offers that flexibility, and I think I'm going to be putting so many hours into the Switch, especially because, and I've mentioned this in the past, the Switch still doesn't have that many games. There are, a lot of games on the Nintendo Switch eStore or whatever it's called, and I've been getting into more indie, smaller titles like Shovel Knight and like Cave Story. I'm just about finished Cave Story, I believe, and my next game is going to be Rabbids. But in terms of like big games like Zelda, Rabbids, Odyssey that's coming out later this year, the Switch is still lacking in that department. So I'm loving the fact that Skyrim is coming to the Switch. I'll be playing the shit out of it. Once I do, I'll let you guys know how it goes. But let me know what you think about Skyrim on the Nintendo Switch. Do you have a Switch? Are you going to be picking up one soon, especially with Skyrim launching later this year? And just what are your overall thoughts about the console and the game being on there? Let me know in the comments. And the last big piece of gaming news is about Assassin's Creed Origins. GameSpot did a great video where they asked whether AC Origins was going to be better than Assassin's Creed 2. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this, one, because I'm very excited for Assassin's Creed Origins, but also two, I'm playing Assassin's Creed 2 right now in preparation for Origins. I plan to play the entire Ezio trilogy. I am on PC, so it's not called the Ezio trilogy, but you know what I mean, right? It's AC2, Revelations, and Brotherhood. So I really want to talk about this particular video because it asks itself the question again, whether Origins can live up to the expectations of 2, which some argue is one of the greatest, if not the greatest, Assassin's Creed games of all time. Black Flag is up there, and what's the other game that's up there? I know that some people like Rogue, I don't know, but it's definitely either Assassin's Creed 2 or Black Flag, depending upon what you like. So I want to talk about what GameSpot says about AC Origins and give my thoughts, especially again because I'm playing AC2 at the moment. So they say the following things. AC Origins, of course, is a prologue to the entire series set in ancient Egypt. I'll stop here. This is a great first platform, I think, for people that are entirely new to the Assassin's Creed franchises, or people like me that have only played the first couple of games and the kind of lost, interest in the Assassin's Creed franchise because of, buggy games and just there being so many games releasing every year. It's hard to keep up with it. So I think, like myself, I'm really looking forward to AC Origins because it's going to be a good starting point for the series again and for you to get back into the franchise. So there is that. They talked about a number of things, GameSpot that is. They talked about choice, combat, and also the world, the setting. So let's talk about choice. First of all, you're free to tackle any situation apparently as you see fit. So you can be very stealthy, you can use a lot of bow attacks, you can use just, heavy attacks and just roll right in there and attack enemies head on. And I like that. I like the ability to choose. Assassin's Creed 2 does have that if we're looking at that as a comparison point. You can go into any situation and just, attack guards and then attack and kill your target, right? Or you can be very stealthy like I did in Assassin's Creed 2. I had a target and I had the poison hidden blade. And I snuck in there, hit him with a hidden blade that was poisoned, of course, and I ran away before anyone could notice, and slowly the target died. So it's good to see that AC Origins, seemingly anyways, has this ability to choose, how you play the game and how you approach missions and quests. Also as well, the combat system, and this is a big talking point with AC Origins, the combat system has changed a lot. The person at GameSpot talked about it being like Dark Souls light, and the way he described this as is you're in control of every swing. You need to know the range and speed of your weapons. You need to be able to dodge and roll and know when to do so to be able to, one, avoid attacks and also strike enemies at the precise time. It's not like apparently like AC2 where you can seriously, like you could spam that counter movement and almost all the time you're able to counter enemies and kill them pretty much straight away. There are some exceptions to that, right? But apparently you need to be able to precisely time your weapon attacks and your defense attacks in AC Origins, which is going to lend itself to more strategic gameplay, which is good. Apparently the combat is much more engaging than past games, and weapon choice is actually key. Like you can't just use any weapon. Although in AC2, I mean, you couldn't just use a hidden blade or a dagger in all situations. Sometimes you had to use the sword, or sometimes you had to use like fists or the throwing knives, right? Like especially if you're taking on really heavily armored enemies in AC2, sometimes it's better to use throwing knives and kill them, from a distance. So yeah, there is that distinction I wanted to point out there. Apparently, though, the effectiveness of the dodge roll in AC Origins is inconsistent. Apparently, the player, when he was actually using the dodge roll at the right moment, was still getting hit. I don't know how true that is, but there is that. Also as well, the setting apparently is the biggest draw of the game. The Egyptian setting, that is breathtaking. There is a huge amount of detail. The world is alive with all these NPCs, rather, in the marketplaces, and there is no minimap, which just allows you to explore the world, which is a nice touch, I must admit, although I do still want to see the choice of being able to add a minimap, just in case some players want it. You know, choice is always good in terms of playing games. And apparently, this is not from GameSpot, it's from everyone else. People are saying that this map is huge, and it's the biggest world in the series yet. So, of course, Egypt is the real pull factor, or the draw factor, to AC Origins. If you've seen the gameplay, it's absolutely fucking beautiful. It is gorgeous, and I cannot wait to be able to explore this, especially because there is so much detail. Just like the water looks fucking phenomenal, yeah? It really just looks like a tropical, like, I know it's Egypt, yeah, but it looks like a paradise, yeah? But I will say that just because the world is big, of course, that doesn't mean it's going to be good. It needs to be filled with interesting things. If it's just going to be really bare bones, like AC1, then it's going to be something that I'm not interested in. But I will say that judging from the gameplay so far, it does seem varied. It does seem like there is a lot to do, a lot of different marketplaces and monuments and structures and buildings. So everything is looking promising. But apparently the biggest con with the game is the story and the writing. And this is a problem that Assassin's Creed has had since Ezio. Ezio in AC2 and the Ezio trilogy, of course, was such an interesting and compelling character. You couldn't not, you know, love Ezio in those games. He was just so charismatic, yeah, and funny. And his accent was fucking to die for. Right? That Italian. But apparently the protagonist in AC Origins, Bayek, is a very serious character. He's very monotone, and he doesn't seem like he's, you know, really interesting as a protagonist, but apparently his wife is interesting in the game, so that'll be an interesting dynamic to see, you know, his wife interact with Bayek. So apparently overall AC Origins seems improved. That's the perspective that I'm getting as well. I'd love to know all your thoughts. What do you think about AC Origins so far? Are you out of the loop of the Assassin's Creed franchise? Are you going to be giving the franchise another go with AC Origins? Please let me know your thoughts about the franchise and about this game in the comments below. Alrighty, and now it's time for the quickfire segment, where we just list 5 big pieces of gaming news that I didn't get the chance to talk about this week, and I give my very, very quick opinions on them. So let's start. Number 1, Guardians of the Galaxy, the Telltale series, just released their latest episode called More Than a Feeling. I've been somewhat enjoying this series, but I must admit it is a little bit boring at times, and the characters in the game are certainly not as memorable as those in the movie. I think they could have improved the characters and the jokes being made and the writing and all that stuff, but it was okay. I think the latest episode was the second best overall, the second one was the best so far, and the first one was kind of the worst. So those are my quick thoughts on that. Number 2, 6 years later, Bethesda's Brink is suddenly free to play. And we talked about this in the podcast. We literally said in the podcast that Bethesda is doing this because why the fuck not? The game isn't selling that well, or hasn't sold that well for a very long time. It had a very small player base. The game apparently was like 99 cents on the Steam store. So Bethesda said, why the fuck not? Why not, you know, let's try and do this to market test to see whether people are still interested in Brink. And the game shot up to 30,000 people playing it, which was insane. So it seemed like it was a good choice. Number 3, Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle, which I'm going to be playing, revealed its season pass. I think we're just going to have to get used to the fact that season passes are a thing in the games industry. Nintendo is starting to get into it. Of course, they had their, I believe, their very first season pass with Zelda Breath of the Wild, so I am not surprised to see Mario and Rabbids adopt the same market practice, I should say. It's a better phrase. Number 4, Microsoft confirms it's talking to Sony about crossplay. Yes, please. I think, you know, crossplay for the future of the industry is so important. I don't like it when games get to the stage where they have a very fragmented player base, where on each individual platform or console, the player base is very small because people just lose, you know, inevitably lose interest in a game as time goes on. For most games anyways, there are some exceptions, but being able to have crossplay and allowing console players to play together and PC players potentially to play with console players, there are some issues with keyboard, you know, being more effective. Keyboard and mouse, that is, being more effective than controllers, but that just increases the player base for games moving forward, you know, indefinitely. So I think it's a good thing. Hopefully Sony does agree with Microsoft. And the 5th piece of quickfire news is that the Destiny 2 beta is coming out this week and preloading has been announced. I am really excited for the PC beta. I will certainly be playing it this week. Destiny 2 is shaping up to be pretty good, and I'm actually pretty excited for the game, so So we'll see how the beta operates. Some people were very torn on the beta. It's a pretty polarizing game so far, but we'll see how it goes. And segment number 5, we'll be listing the top 10 selling games in Australia for the week ending August 20. I think this will just be an interesting segment to look at what games are selling the best each and every week. Let me know what you think about this in the comments below. But starting at number 10, we have Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Siege from Ubisoft. Number 9, SO Morrowind from Bethesda. Number 8, Elder Scrolls Skyrim from Bethesda, which is interesting. Number 7, Mario Kart 8 Nintendo, of course. Number 6, this is really peculiar, right? Prey from Bethesda is at number 6 this week in terms of sales. Wow. Number 5, and this is really an Australian phenomenon, Rugby League Live 4 is selling really well this week. You won't see this in any US or any other stores around the world, but it's selling well in Australia because we love our rugby league. Number 4, Grand Theft Auto 5, of course, it's selling so fucking well. Number 3, Ages of Mayhem from Deep Silver. That's interesting. Number 2, Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Wildlands from Ubisoft. And number 1, this has just been such a surprise, Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy from Activision. I think everyone expected this game to sell well, but not this well. It's been topping charts left, right, and center. So this has been interesting to look at. And finally, we've come to the fan questions part of the podcast. Each and every podcast, I will ask you to leave your questions in the comments below, just in terms of gaming-related questions or personal-related questions, and I will answer them at the end of every single aLone cast. And today's question 1 comes from Cyrek, who asks, do you think it's possible that BGS Montreal is working on one of the 2 big projects that will be released before the Elder Scrolls 6? I think absolutely BGS Montreal is working on one of those big projects. I mean, it seems like Bethesda Softworks is just doing so much. Whether you think that's a good thing or not is up to your opinion, but I think that the reason why that they created Bethesda Game Studios Montreal is for Bethesda to be able to branch out and do many different projects. So yes, I do think BGS Montreal is doing one of these smaller side projects, while Bethesda Softworks proper, or in Maryland, is doing the bigger things like the Elder Scrolls or Starfield. I still think they're doing Starfield. So that's the answer to your question, Cyrek. Ratchet is asking a more personal question. He asks, what advice do you have for someone who is about to enter college? College is pretty important in my opinion. I'm someone that was a bit of a nerd during my university times. University is what we refer to as college in where you are, Ratchet, in Portugal, or if you're in the United States. My advice would be, take studying seriously and take classes seriously. You don't want to get to the end of a semester where you're struggling and you're studying and pulling late nights to try and just pass a test. I think you'll really regret it if you get to the end of a semester and all of your marks are really just like passes or C's or D's or whatever marking system you have in your respective country. So I will say that, yes, please take studying seriously. Don't be so tempted to keep going out and drinking and partying with people. Although that is important too, if you do have the free time. Don't just stay at home and just play games and be a hermit. If you have the opportunity, if you have free time, go out and, have fun with some friends. You don't need to get drunk all the time, but you need to balance, studying and having fun. So that would be my advice to you. It's what I did, and I think I did pretty well leaving university. The third question comes from Raindrops, and he or she asks, I don't know what your gender is, I apologize. Will you be continuing your studies on law or any other field? I do not think I will be studying anything related to law anytime soon. The job that I'm in now, I don't need to do any additional study for law. I do mostly policy. While I'm admitted as a lawyer, I don't actually practice officially. So I don't need to do any other study to be able to continue or progress in my current position. And I'm pretty happy where I am. I don't think I've said this publicly, but I'll say it now. I don't see myself doing a law or legal position beyond the job that I'm in now. I'm having the most enjoyment that I can possibly have with the law as I am in this position. If I'm going to be moving on to another job, I want to do something completely different, whether it's like marketing or communications or PR or something like that. So maybe I would be doing study in other fields, yeah, if I need to get a degree or some sort of qualification, if I want to be able to do something else than law. So that's the answer to your question. And the final question comes from Ben Yannock. Do you use your pseudonym, Lone Vault Wanderer, more for personal or professional anonymity? It's more so for professional, yeah? The entire reason why I haven't revealed my face and I don't use my real name or anything like that is because I was worried for so long that if my YouTube was out there and if my personal name and identity was attached to my YouTube channel, that employers would be able to Google my name, see my YouTube channel, and for that reason not hire me into their job. Like, you guys know me, I'm not doing anything stupid on my gaming channel or my YouTube channel. All I do is talk about gaming news, yeah? Sometimes I swear and stuff, but I don't really care about that. But just the perception of having a YouTube channel and having an opinion on the internet and having a big following, I thought was a big risk factor in terms of me being able to get a job. So I just thought it's the safer option and decision for me to lay low and keep the two lives separate. Of course, there is a personal aspect to that where I don't want, you know, my family to be receiving, you know, stupid death threats and criticisms and all that kind of stuff from other people on the internet. I don't mind if I'm personally attacked, yeah, but I want to protect my family and my partner and stuff like that. So it's mostly professional, but there is a bit of a personal aspect to that. So that is today's aLone cast. Thank you for joining me until the end. Please leave your thoughts in the comments below about all of the topics that I've talked about today. Of course, if you want me to answer one of your questions for the fan segment, please leave your questions in the comments below, and I'll pick up about 4 or 5 of them for the next aLone cast and shout out your name. So until next time, I hope you enjoyed this. This has been aLone Vault Wanderer. Please take care of yourself, and would you kindly keep fighting the good fight.